never before felt so much like I just watched 48 separate movies written by anywhere from 24 to 32 different writers, sitting in anywhere from 20 to 25 separate rooms with nothing to work with but a general country's history and current situation, plus a list of characters with personalities and backgrounds, with 1 to 3 of them having a potential outline of future goals. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Look at it this way. Generally, even episodic dramas have episodic arcs included, where the temporary story stretches out between 2 or more episodes. Most episodic dramas also have an overall story that pops in more and more frequently as the story goes. The format of episodic dramas varies between countries and genres, but most of them have these elements in them. Take Under the Skin 1 and 2 and Strange Tales of Tang Dynasty 1 and 2 with 3 on the way as examples, but then look at stuff like the 3 different CSI series or tons of other episodic American and Canadian shows and compare them with this one. But even then, still, for some reason, bloody Chang'an, otherwise for some weird reason known as Detective Samoyeds 1 and 2 with no 3 on the horizon, is the first drama I've watched where it flat out felt like 48 separate movies rather than 48 episodes in a drama. Why? Well, for one thing, every single episode followed the exact same pattern. Literally every single one of them was so predictably the same. It was like someone used the most basic of all basic storytelling lessons and wrote 48 stories with it. Intro, rise of mystery, case solved, case explained, and most of them had an outro of some kind that was just as episodic as everything else. Well, some of them had a brief reminder that there really was an overall arcing story buried in the background somewhere. Like, within this drama, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but they never once even had a bad guy get away or refuse to confess. Every single episode has a wrapped up conclusion with the bad guy not only getting caught and cornered with evidence, every single bad guy ends up confessing and confirming that everything Samuel said, even his theories on why they did it, is right. On top of that was how buried that overarching story really was. I mean, it was so rarely referred to, I think we only saw a glimpse of it like maybe 5 times each season. And if you thought that momentum would carry over, you're wrong. Every single time, including after episode 24, which ended season 1, because bombshell dropped! And 100% ignored from episode 25 onwards to whatever episode briefly mentioned the overarching story again, which I don't even remember when they bring it up again. And even that did not bring up what we saw in episode 24, because guess what? Only the overarching bad guy that dropped the bombshell knows the bombshell's content, so of course literally nobody else is talking about it. Then we have the characters themselves. Apart from the fact that literally nobody grows or changes in the slightest, we actually have characters fading away into the background, 1 case of things changing far too fast, and 2 cases of major events completely vanishing into thin air right in front of our eyes. One thing that happened too fast, we had Sun Young making that big of a deal over Samu getting too close to Li Ju, and the Emperor and that other guy, dun 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 dun, deciding to test her. And that was literally the one time where one episode connects directly to the next, because in the next episode, dun 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 dun, that was the test. And she passed with flying colors and is suddenly so attracted to Li Ju, she's 100% safe, and the whole topic of not getting close to Li Ju and the others is 100% dropped and gone like it was never an issue. I mean, legit, what? It's not a joke. That's how fast you forget that Sun Young was supposedly the leader of a bandit group. Her character's the only one that faded into the background while simultaneously jumping up the ladder to one of the very few with any relevance left by the end of season 2. 2 major events that completely vanish into thin air right in front of our eyes. First was the kiss that almost happened. Like, within an inch, 2 characters almost kiss. But apart from a super brief moment in the next episode that could maybe be considered a bit of an awkwardness as they remember last night. Maybe. I saw it and I still wasn't sure that's what they were implying that was supposed to be. It was so brief and so unclear. The whole thing is so completely never once mentioned again. Like, ever. Even though they do continue to prove that these two have feelings for each other. It's... And two, someone adopts a baby. And then the baby goes poof. Literally, from all accounts I can tell, that baby was really adopted by that character. And yet that baby is never even mentioned in passing ever again. Not once. Not anywhere. Not by anyone. Not seen. Not heard. Not referenced. Poof! Gone. The characters fading into the background. Let's make one thing very clear. The main characters in this drama are not the main characters. There's simply the most reoccurring characters. Let's break this down. First, there is Zusu. I forget how exactly to say her name. I hope Zusu is right. She does appear more often than the Emperor, but in reality, she's no bigger a deal than he is. In fact, she's slightly less of a deal, really. I hated that Emperor. I didn't put him in this list, by the way, but I hated that Emperor. He was so ridiculously, arrogantly... Bleh. What? Ugh. What a joke. Back to Zuzu. She's incredibly stagnant and 100% useless, except when the story needs a library. And by the way, there was an episode or two where they had her aversion to dead bodies get overblown to the point where she can't even stand to see a roasted chicken because it reminded her of a case, and she had to take a bath every time. I forget what word it was they mentioned, etc. It was literally so bad, just all of a sudden, for no reason. Because I swear neither of those cases were any worse than anything else that we'd already seen. And then it all went poof. She was back to normal and there was no more reason for that than there was for her to be through the roof. The actress did a fine job. And the character was cute. And she was really pretty. But this character, while unique with her library brain, is literally only useful for her brain. And that doesn't even come up in every episode. And in the end, she could have been deleted, and from start to finish, literally nobody would notice. This character was almost entirely useless. Next, there's Sanpao and Xiongyi. These two are the most consistent side characters that are basically nobody's, and yet the story wouldn't go anywhere without them. They are the most versatile, where Sanpao runs around doing all the grunt work, and Xiongyi is 85% the coroner, but she's also useful in other ways. Both of them also have such strong standalone personality traits where they themselves create scenes and are also used for by just about anybody else to play off of in order for scenes to happen. And if either one of them were deleted, the story would fall apart. Now we've got Sun Young. She's a hard character to explain. In one sense, from start to finish, what the heck is she doing in this story? She shouldn't have been anywhere near as big of a deal as she was. Like, legit, it's weird. But in another sense, who she is as a standalone character, why as a standalone character she's important, is one little undercurrent pulling at your feet that pulls harder and harder as the story goes. And if there had been a season 3, might have actually knocked us over. Maybe. But more importantly is how important she is to Samuel. Because she represents the fact there are two things happening in this story. There is the team solving cases for the city they live in, and there's the inn where Samuel's vulnerability, the Samuel that hardly anyone knows, is guarded by none other than Sun Young. The further it went, the more the relationship between those two, I'm like, what is really going on here? I'll come back to this sort of. Then there is Li Zhi. And he, more than anyone, is the character that really fades away into near total deletion, and it's absolutely mind-blowing that it's him, and that I'm not exaggerating about how badly he fades away. See, Li Zhi is the first main character that we know. He's the one that we're introduced to. He's the one that introduces the show to us. He is the leader of the team, the one with all the weight on his shoulders, because right off the bat we know he's related to the Emperor, and therefore his whole life is under heavy scrutiny. Every step he takes a careful one in order for him to survive. And yet, the further the story goes, the more he himself not only never changes, I mean, even as a straight face, takes his job seriously character, usually, as characters get comfortable with each other, you see them more and more loosen up and showing a bit of an expression in their face, especially when alone with his group. And yet with him, we don't. Not really. I think throughout the entire 48 episodes, we maybe see him actually smile like 3 times. 5 maximum. I mean, the full-blown smile, which is actually pretty cute, if I can even find a picture of it, because I don't remember where it happens. Even small smiles. He really doesn't do it very often at all. You'd think he'd chill out and relax a little more the more familiar he gets with Samuel's methods, for instance. But this is one of the factors that makes me say this is 48 separate movies, not 48 episodes in a drama. Because over and over again, Li Zhu continues to doubt and roll his eyes and act like Samuel's just messing around or being stupid again. I mean, everybody in this drama does. They keep making the same comment. Do you ever think of anything but food? Guys, you know he doesn't. The further he goes, the more often that phrase, do you ever think of anything but food, should morph into, my gosh, you really don't change, or like, worded some other way. Not like this is literally the first time that we've ever found this out about him, because it's not. By episode 48, we've already heard this, like, what's 48 times 3 times? Back to what I wrote. Li Zhu continues to doubt and roll his eyes and act like someone was just messing around or being stupid again. When the further the story goes, the more he should know full well that's exactly how Samuel solves every case. For instance, going off script slightly again, there was an episode where he's like, that money bag looks familiar. And Li Zhu's like, all money bags in the city look familiar because you've probably studied every single one of them. Because Samuel is supposedly greedy and all he can ever think about is money. We kind of get back to this. But then later in the episode, that bag looked familiar because it's part of solving the case and stuff. And Li Zhu's like, oh, that's why you said it looked familiar. And I'm like, Li Zhu, literally, it wasn't even that many episodes that we went through this, where Samuel recognized the money bag as belonging to somebody else, and it was a major clue in solving the case. And 48 movies, people. This isn't 48 episodes in a drama. It's 48 movies written by anywhere between 24 and 32 different writers. I'm not exaggerating. Then we move from season 1 to season 2, and I think this is where it all got even worse for Li Zhu's character, because Samuel gets so comfortable giving orders that more and more and more, he literally takes over the role that Li Zhu started out with. The role of the leader. And what does that leave Li Zhu with? Nothing. Because he, like Zusu, turns out to have basically nothing else that makes him distinct. Not even his fighting skills, because that barely ever comes into the story, despite the fact that that is supposed to be his big major skill, is his fighting skills. We almost never see him fight in the story. He carries a sword at all times, but he almost never uses it. It really doesn't come into the story. And if you think I'm exaggerating, think of it this way. We finally come to an episode near the end of season 2. I checked. It's literally episode 48. That reminds us of Li Zhu's episode 1 of season 1 identity, i.e. how closely related to the Emperor he is, because in this episode, Li Zhu gets framed. So, the whole episode is about him, right? Well, sort of. Because sure, it's about Samu and the others solving the case to prove that Li Zhu is innocent. But, did you hear what I just said? Li Zhu himself is literally not in the episode, even once, even briefly, even as a glimpse in the background, until the whole case is over. I.e., the episode is 49 minutes and 40 seconds long, including the names at the start and finish. And when does Li Zhu make his first appearance in this episode that is focused on him being framed? 35 minutes and 21 seconds into it. Yep, I double checked. So, that just leaves Samuel, and that's right, he's the only character that never once fades, and instead becomes increasingly more obvious as the main character of the whole thing. Because, without him, absolutely none of these cases would have been solved faster than 4 months down the road, if at all. And on one hand, that's a lot of outside of the box bad guys creating outside of the box cases that need an outside of the box thinker to solve them. And on the other hand, that's repeat what I just said. I.e., from the character's perspective, you can't entirely fault normal people like Li Zhu and the others for having no clue how to solve cases that are so far out there. But the fact that's true points to a definitively purposeful setup on the drama's creator's part to unabashedly spotlight Samuel, because every single one of those 48 cases really was, rather coincidentally, far out there. This, by the way, is a setup that Asian dramas love to set up, and along with this setup comes the typical scenario that I am getting so sick of, I cannot describe how sick I am of it, where the one character everyone knows they'd be doomed without, i.e. Samuel in this one, is, over and over and over and over again, instead of being treated with any kind of respect, taken advantage of, manipulated, messed with, forcefully used, etc. I mean, yes, characters like Samuel easily get a ginormous head because they know full well how smart they are, and egos that big are easy to overinflate even more so. So I understand treading carefully in order to keep them from floating away into space on their rather high horse. However, it bothers me so much when we get the scenario that ends up being a running joke in all of these stories, and that is the request for payment. I mean, literally, everyone else is getting paid to do their job. But when Samuel sticks his hand out, everyone acts like he's just being greedy. Greedy! Literally, what gives anyone the right to think that he should be doing this job for free? And in fact, worse than for free, he's being taken away from a paid job in order to work for free for you. And nobody but him and me sees a problem with this. And as if all of that isn't bad enough, on top of that is how often Sun Young expects to get paid, and almost nobody ever makes any kind of comment about how wrong that is, considering she's doing literally nothing to earn that payment. She doesn't own Samuel. Why is she getting paid like they're renting her slave every time that he goes off to help them solve a case? Why does she get the payment instead of him so regularly? She did nothing. He solves the case. You're literally telling me it's nothing but greed for him to want payment, but it's totally normal for Sun Young to get paid. And this is reoccurring all over the place. Go East did the same thing. The character that literally everybody desperately needs in order to get anywhere is the most, used and abused character in the whole drama, because everybody just... Anyway, moving on. Samu is a character type I'm drawn to right from the start, completely outside of the box creative and incredibly smart, and while sometimes his childness is a little more than I like, the fact is half an act because he has a depth of seriousness to him that's deeper than an ocean is made pretty obvious pretty fast and fairly frequently, and that makes a big impact. I mean, there are some, I forget, something other Yamaneko, something or other. Ones like that take it a little bit too far, where there is a seriousness to the character, but you almost never see it. Most of the time, they're just weird. Samu is not weird. He's childish. He's not weird. Some of these other characters, they get kind of weird, and it's kind of annoying, and I really don't like that. It's like when you pick up a manga, and you get the little blip of a character instead of the actual human-looking person. It's like, it gets tiring, and I'd like to see the actual human. Thanks. It's a style thing. I think maybe the Japanese are worse at it, but I'm getting way off track, and I was doing so good at sticking onto it. I'm gonna stick to this. Samu is also a very strange mix of someone that's vulnerable and soft, like an easy target, and yet he's way stronger and harder to defeat than he looks. And I mean, it might sound weird, but I can't think of anyone else that has a necklace like what he's wearing that would look so correct on them like it does on him. It's so big and chunky and awkward, and yet for some reason it suits him so well, it's weird. Usually something like that would end up having some kind of big story to it, considering how eye-catching it is. But while he said where it comes from in one episode, it was a surface-level explanation almost weird that it even came up, because I can't remember what on earth made it relevant enough to... Anyway. And if it's true what he said, and I can't tell for sure, like, I mean, if it is true, I can't tell if it's actually more significant than that, and he was just telling the surface level of a much deeper story, or if the surface level really is all there is to it. Because it never comes up again. It sucks, and I mean sucks big time, that who Samoa is and everything from his background coming to the forefront happens so slowly. This being the overarching story that gets so completely buried within the 48 movies, it's almost entirely forgotten as existing between the rare moments that the story reminds you of its existence. And this, the fact that Samoa is a character type that I'm drawn to right from the start, is the main reason I loved his character, because he doesn't do any more growing than any of the others do. Every single character in this drama stays exactly the same as they were at the start. Or so close to exactly the same regardless of what they go through. Almost kissing someone, adopting a baby, supposedly falling in love, and like, oh my gosh, don't get me started. And watching that person die in their arms, etc., etc., etc. They do not change. They make the same remarks, the same jokes, the same eye roll responses, etc., etc., etc. from the start to the finish without a hitch, like 24 to 32 different writers were given a basic story setting and character list of personalities and backgrounds, and without any reference to each other's scripts, those 24 to 32 different writers wrote 48 movies, and someone called it a drama. Some people think this drama has a high rewatch value, and I laughed when I saw that. Yes, I do want to rewatch the drama, because yes, I did enjoy it, but 90% of my interest is on Samuel, who, by the way, was voiced by a voice that does not properly suit his face, and remained weirdly disconnected from it through the entire thing. I.e., usually I get used to the voice and it meshes into one character with the face. But in Samuel's case, well, sometimes it was fine and I got used to it. There were other times when I just could not reconcile it, and it jarred me right out of the scene, which sucked. This actor, Zhu Hai Qiao, if I'm saying his name correctly. I apparently saw him on 2 different things before this drama. I remember him in Go East, and I had no problem with his voice in that one. I don't remember him in Marvelous Women. Don't even remember what he looked like. Anyway, I didn't have a problem with his voice in that one either. Like, I don't remember him, but I don't remember having a problem with anybody's voice in that one. And then I saw him in Love, Game, and Eastern Fantasy after I watched this one, and I didn't have a problem with his voice in that one either. It's just this drama that it was a weird matchup, in my opinion. Not because the voice actor did a bad job at all. The voice actor was perfectly fine. It's just that for me, it was too obviously not that actor's voice. The actor and the voice actor almost never melded into one character. As a result, it was constantly like there were 2 separate people involved in this character's creation, which is weird and annoying, and I don't know how else to describe it. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. If it wasn't a problem for you, then I'm glad that it wasn't a problem for you. Moving on. That was a side thing. What was I saying? Rewatch value. Even the first time through it, I was Samuel, the actor. I could see Samuel. That was like 90% of my focus whenever he was on the screen. Like, I was watching him. That guy is good looking. He's different looking. He's good looking. There's the whole setup of how his character is set up. What he wears, the jewelry he wears, his hair, what he's like, how he moves, everything about him is just, I cannot help staring at him. I am slightly surprised how much I liked San Pao and Xiong Yi, and Sun Young became more interesting as the story went along, even though I never once actually properly believed them that she was the leader of a gang before this drama. Like, honestly, ages, by the way. Exactly how old is Samuel supposed to be? I started to get the impression he could very well be in his late teens rather than in his 20s or something, like the actor. I forget now. He was mid to late 20s, I think it was, when he played this character. But, considering how his character acts and considering how some of the characters treat him, I'm actually starting to think that he's actually supposed to be in his late teens somewhere. Like, way younger than the actor. Which makes me wonder about the others as well, and makes me wonder the most about Sun Young. Especially if she was the leader of a gang once, and given the way she treats Samuel, how big of an age gap is there supposed to be between those 2? Last comment. Yes, I enjoyed this story. Yes, I liked more characters than just Samu. Yes, it has a rewatch value all on its own. And yes, more than anything else, there needs to be a season 3. This stupid 48 movie drama leaves you hanging so bad with the ending season 2 has that it isn't funny. I thought with the way season 1 ended that we'd finally be getting into the actual story when season 2 started, but no, we did not. We continued with the disconnected movie format of episodes all the way through episode 48, and then that episode ends even more dramatically than episode 24 did, so I'm even more convinced that the story has to be actually starting now. But season 1 and season 2 were both released back in 2017, and I am making this video in December of 2024, and there's been nothing in between those years from then till now. And there's nothing on the horizon that I know about for the future, which means, in my opinion, half the rewatch of this drama value, of this drama, is actually purely to relieve the tension of a story left hanging in the air. And that's what I thought of the drama Detective Samoyeds Season 1 and 2. And if anyone does hear of the Season 3 coming out, please let me know, because it needs to happen. Because leaving stories hanging this badly is pure torture. Bye. Thanks for watching.